Dan?
Oh, Congressman?
I see you're alone. You mind if I join you?
No, not at all. Have a seat. Would you like some lunch?
Actually, I have a luncheon meeting at 1 o'clock. I'm a little bit early.
Huh?
I haven't seen you around the last few days. I kind of expected to hear from you.
Well, I've had other things on my mind.
Oh, yes, of course. The Sumner annulment hearing. When will you be finished with that?
It's finished, as of yesterday.
Well, I think I'm beginning to see the light now.
Huh?
I ran into your client this morning at her father's office. When I asked how you were, her response was, well, let's say less than enthusiastic.
Well, it doesn't surprise me.
I take it the hearing didn't go as you anticipated.
No, we lost. The annulment was denied.
And as a result, the relationship, both professional and otherwise, between you and Courtney
Is dissolved. Completely and permanently by mutual agreement.
I'd be sorry to think that was true, Dan. Very sorry.
Why?
Well, perhaps you were forgetting our discussion of the other day, when I offered to share with you certain privileged information about the young lady in question.
Ah, yes. You were going to get back to me on that, right?
I think if you'd been a little more patient, it might have changed your thinking considerably. As a matter of fact, once you've heard what I have to say, I think you'll realize what a big mistake you've made.
You have evidence that links me to Beverly Randolph's death? John, what do you say?
Ben, I'm sorry. I wanted you to know. She was a patient of yours, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. But how did you know?
Carla Redlin, she saw Beverly Randolph's picture in the Chronicle. She also remembered that she'd seen her coming out of your office not too long ago.
Well, John, how did Carla get to you? And why is any of this evidence against Ben?
Well, you see, Jean's been investigating Domi and Vanessa Fazan.
Ben.
Yeah, you know what Domi is.
Yeah.
That's the thing that Nancy's in, the self-help group.
Anyway, Carla was looking for Jean over at my office, and she had remembered Mrs. Randolph coming out of your office, and from everything we've been able to turn up, Jean might very well be right about this whole case.
Yes, but what about Mrs. Randolph? How did she die?
Cerebral hemorrhage.
I see. Are you implying that it was caused by my negligence?
Ben, I'm not implying anything. I'm just here to tell you the information that we've been able to gather in the investigation so far.
Oh, I see. So this is an investigation.
Ben, honey, wait a minute. Let him finish.
You see, when we arrived at Mrs. Randolph, she was dead. There was no evidence or any suspicion of any kind of foul play. The coroner said it was a cerebral hemorrhage, and there was no reason to go any further, except we did find a bottle of pills next to her body. And just a matter of routine, we checked it out and traced them to the Walker Pharmacy at Hollister Mall.
Pills? What kind of pills?
Antihistamines.
Antihistamines. You mean a prescription?
No. They were over-the-counter stuff.
All right, then she bought those on her own and against my advice.
Unfortunately, we got a different story from the head pharmacist.
Why? What did he tell you?
Well, apparently, Mrs. Randolph had been trading there for a number of years. So when she walked in a couple of weeks ago to ask for something to relieve her hay fever, the head pharmacist, knowing that she had a high blood pressure problem, suggested that she consult her physician and get him to fill out a prescription.
But I didn't do that, John.
At which point, she told him that she had already talked to you, Dr. Ben Martin, and that you had told her that any over-the-counter hay fever medicine would be perfectly safe.
So the woman is dead. What does that prove?
I don't have any proof. It's just a gut feeling that there's some connection.
Gene, did you ever see her at any of the Domi sessions? Did you ever run into her at Dr. Fazan's office?
No, I didn't. But if I was still on that case, I'm telling you, I could check through those files in her office, and I bet you $1 to a donut that there is some connection with that Randolph woman.
Come on, Gene, check the obits in the paper this week. There must have been at least 5 older women who died in Kingsley this week. Now, why single her out? I mean, why this Randolph woman and not one of them?
Because she's the only one out of the 5 that fits the pattern. She's wealthy, very wealthy, Walter. And listen to this, the lady is alone. She doesn't have a family.
Gene, of all the deaths we've investigated, from the Gilbert suicide, all the rest of them, this one is the most natural cause. I mean, cerebral hemorrhage, for crying out loud.
Yeah, but you can have suicide and a murder. I mean, you can stage that to look natural. You know that. But still, there's the matter of those pills.
Gene, if you want to commit suicide, you don't swallow a couple of hay fever pills. I mean, it could be painful, not to mention it could be chancy,
Well,
too.
listen, I agree with everything that you're saying, but still, I think that there's... Look, now, come on. How many years have you and I worked together? I haven't asked you any favors, but just this once now, for old time's sake. Walter, let me go with this. Let me just go with this and play my hunch.
Meaning?
Meaning, let's follow this up and investigate it and see if there's some kind of tie-in between Domi and the Randolph lady.
Gene, you are not suggesting that you get involved again in this investigation, are you?
Well, no. I mean, Vanessa Vazan is on to me right now, and there's no way that I could get near that office. I don't exactly see you as a super sleuth either, though.
Well, thanks for giving me that much at least.
You're welcome.
Now, where does that leave us?
Hello, Gene.
Hi, Stacy. How are you?
All right.
What's wrong with her this morning?
I was afraid that was going to happen.
What are you talking about?
Did you read last night's late edition, the Wainwright statement?
Yeah, I did. And as a matter of fact, I was glad to see that he put the rape crisis center at the top of his list. Even though I didn't get that impression from Stacy.
Yes, well, what it amounted to was a complete retraction, a denial of the article that Stacy had written about him, and I don't think she's ever going to forgive me for allowing it to be published.
Oh.
I suppose I'll have...
Look, John, in the short time I knew Mrs. Randolph, she seemed overreactive. She was rather difficult.
Okay, well, can you explain that a little bit? What does that mean?
Well, the first time she came to see me, she was complaining about these terrible headaches that they were keeping her awake at night, and she wanted some kind of sedative to help her sleep. I insisted that I had to have her history first and that I would do a complete workup. And when I suggested that, she became very indignant, to the point of storming out of here. I had to stop her, and, well, in the end, she finally agreed to take the test. And, of course, the high blood pressure showed up immediately. I mean, she had a family history of it.
Well, wasn't she aware of this before?
Yeah, well, if she was certainly denying it. Now, I suggested putting her on a complete program that would bring her blood pressure down, and I figured in the process it would take care of her other problems. But when I made that suggestion, she simply wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Well, did you get the feeling like she was mentally okay?
Well, that's relative, of course, but as far as I could judge, yeah, she was okay.
Why would a woman go to a pharmacist and demand a medication that she knew was going to hurt her and then blame it on Ben? John, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Me neither, Lori. But we have a statement, a sworn statement from the pharmacist. I don't have to tell you how bad that
Look,
looks.
I am telling you the truth, John. I'm telling you the truth. Now, I can show you her chart. In fact, I'll take you to the file room right this minute. I can pull all of her charts. I'll show you everything.
Fine, if you don't mind.
No, let's go.
Ben, are you all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. You just stay here. I'll be back shortly.
Look, Lee, nothing you could say to me would make me regret the breakup of that relationship. Courtney Sumner is a spoiled brat.
I seem to remember you talking that way about your ex-wife.
Yeah, well, I guess I do have a weakness for that type. I mean, I married one and I've dated way too many of them. See, they do represent a challenge up to a point, you know?
And you've always been one to enjoy a challenge, I thought.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Once they fall, the challenge is gone.
And the problem is that Courtney never fell. Am I right?
I didn't pursue it. I lost interest.
Big mistake, Dan. Of course, it's not too late.
Lee, look, do me a favor, would you? I know you're dying to tell me something. Would you just go ahead and say it and get it over with?
It might interest you to know, Dan, that that young lady is part owner of CTE, Commonwealth Trans Express.
That's the big news? I mean, that's what all this mystery's about? I've known that all along.
And you threw away an opportunity to marry into a multi-million-dollar corporation, just like that?
Yeah, $1 million in monopoly money. I mean, who is Preston Carpenter trying to kid anyway? That company might look good on paper, but it is worth zero. I mean, this is just Preston's way of making himself look important and keeping busy, you know, and I'm sure it's a great tax write-off on top of all that.
I'll clue you, Dan. You got that one pegged all wrong.
What makes you so sure?
Well, for one thing, I've got part of the action.
You bought into CTE?
And I'm sure you know me well enough to know that I wouldn't buy into anything unless I'd done my homework.
So you really think that this thing's going to go, huh?
They've got millions of dollars in capital investment already, with which, for starters, a very substantial, very profitable shipping dock is going to be constructed in the Chesterfield area. And then warehouses, office buildings to house the CTE offices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Dan, it's going to go. There's no question about it.
Look, you're a politician. You're no businessman.
Which is why I researched it so carefully. With my accountant, incidentally. We talked to all the investors, he looked at all the facts and figures, and it looked as good to him as it did to me.
And Courtney is wrapped up in all this, huh?
Preston showed me some private documents, including the company charter. Courtney is right there on page 3, ready to take over the company, or half the company, if and when something happens to her father. Side by side with Vaughn Sumner.
I wonder if Courtney's aware of that.
I don't know. But I know this, Dan. You had the prize-winning fish on your line, and you let it get away. I hope you didn't say anything to Courtney that you can't retract.
Sergeant Brubaker of the Kingsley Police?
Yeah, he's investigating the death of one of Ben's patients, Mrs. Randolph, Beverly Randolph.
Oh, yeah, I read about that in the paper, but the article never mentioned that the police would be involved.
Yeah, well, it seems to be about this non-prescription drug that she was taking. Anyway, I'm sure that Ben will tell you the whole thing.
You know, it's tough for a doctor to lose a patient, no matter what the circumstances. I'm glad you're here for him, Laurie.
Yeah, I am too. Very.
Well, when did you get in?
Just this morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Ben never mentioned it.
I surprised him.
Didn't you come back a little earlier than you'd planned?
A little, yeah.
Any particular reason?
Well, yeah. And no. It's kind of...
Now there is a definitive answer if I ever heard one.
Yeah, well... Actually, there were a lot of things on my mind that I needed to clear up, and I missed him.
And the telegram you got urging you to come back a little earlier than you'd planned, well, maybe that helped out a little bit, too?
Brian, you sent the telegram?
Mm-hmm.
You amaze me. You really do. I mean, right when I think I've got you figured
Now,
out.
don't hold it against me, okay? I was only trying to do you a favor.
Brian, I want to know what's going on. Tell me. I want to know.
Excuse me, Gene. Stacy. Stacy, have you got something on your mind? I mean, is there something wrong?
That question doesn't even deserve an answer. You know as well as I do what's wrong.
Have anything to do with the Wainwright statement?
Wainwright propaganda, you mean? Which you didn't even have the decency to tell me about before you published.
So it is the Wainwright statement, huh? I thought maybe it was because you realized that you had written a somewhat biased article and were beginning to feel a little foolish about it.
Biased? You were the one who's biased, using this newspaper to promote your own candidate, printing as news the official party line of a candidate who talks out of both sides of his mouth, and then covering up for him when he gets caught at it.
Stacy, you know that's not true. Hugh Wainwright is not and never has been my idea of an ideal congressman. But when it comes to a race between him and Lee Carruthers, I think he is the lesser of two evils. And that is the reason, the only reason the Chronicle has backed him. However, we're not very thrilled with his candidacy.
Well, You are thrilled enough to print his lies and to make me the scapegoat for him.
Stacy, that's not true.
Isn't it? What was all this nonsense about him still deliberating over the Rape Crisis Center after my article correctly stated that he'd rejected it? That man is lying and you know it.
No, I don't know it, and neither do you. You printed what you assumed to be the truth, and you got that from other sources.
From my own father and his fiancée. Wainwright himself told Terry he was rejecting the crisis center in favor of the sports medicine wing. He made no bones about it. But the minute the article comes out, oh, then he does a quick about-face.
Yes, but what you should have done is taken this information that Terry Davidson gave you. You had it all the time that you were interviewing Wainwright, and you could have asked him about it to respond to it, but instead you chose deliberately not to mention it.
Because I knew what would have happened if I'd said anything to him. He'd realize I had cornered him and reach back into his propaganda machine and pull out some story as ridiculous as the one that he sold you.
Stacy, a reporter's chief obligation, his first obligation, is to be objective.
Objective? And you call twisting his lies and reporting them as news objective?
What I am saying is you should have taken the information that Terry Davidson gave you and let him respond to it instead of trying to scoop him right under his nose. That way you would have had a less biased article. Now, I cannot allow such sloppy reporting on this paper.
Walter, are you saying that I'm fired?
Well, if you can't keep your ego at home and you can't be fair and objective, yeah, I suppose I am.
This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here and listen to this.
Fine. You just take whatever you're on now and drop it. I'll assign it to someone else. And don't bother to come in the rest of the week. I mean, I'll take care of everything. I'll see that your check is mailed to you.
I'll come back later and clean out my desk.
I'm still looking for a campaign manager, Dan. Oh, look, I've interviewed many, many willing prospects. All with the same tired old line. You need a new image. No-nonsense man of the people, sleeves rolled up, ready to get back to work. You know, everything but kissing babies. Not a new idea in the lot of them.
Well, maybe not, but they all have one big advantage over me. They think you can win.
Now, you listen to me, Dan. I can win. I can pull it off with a little imagination and a little inventive strategy against my opponent.
Such as?
Hugh Wainwright is not unassailable. He has an Achilles heel just like the rest of us.
Okay, I'm listening.
Transcripts of certain conversations with certain people. Tapes. A few off-the-record comments to the wrong people. Listen, this guy is portraying himself as the champion of the underprivileged. Believe me, if you could hear the way he talks about these folks when he thinks nobody's listening.
I have the feeling that you're trying to involve me in a smear campaign.
Dan, there are lots of ways to win an election. But if you were my campaign manager, you would call the shots.
Well, I admit, it does sound like a nice challenge, yeah.
And as we discussed earlier, you've always been one to enjoy a challenge.
That's right. So I won't tell you that I'm not interested. No, as a matter of fact, I have a better idea. I have a way that could cinch this election for you.
Well, go ahead, I'm listening.
Did your sending that telegram have anything to do with Vanessa?
She's a very attractive woman, Lori.
And Ben is attracted to her?
You asked for the truth. I'd say that the attraction is more on her side than his, but...
But there's an attraction between them.
You know, I don't doubt Ben's devotion to you for 1 minute, nor yours to him. Just that I've known Vanessa for a long time. I know what kind of a person she is. And I just thought it would be better if you came back as soon as possible.
Has Ben been seeing Vanessa while I've been gone?
Well, they probably run into one another a couple of times. I mean, in a town this small, it would be difficult not to. Other than that, I know that there is nothing really serious between them at this point. It's just that.
There could be.
Now, you know Ben would never pursue that sort of thing. The truth is that when Vanessa sees something she wants, She goes after it, and with you gone...
Brian, I am very grateful that you sent the telegram. I can't thank you enough. And Ben need never know about any of this.
Yeah, too bad. You had to come back to this, though.
Yeah, what is going on here at the Bedford? I mean, you've told me that Ben isn't in any trouble, and yet do you think he's over his head?
Oh, come on, Lori.
Come on! Brian, he's had 2 deaths. I mean, first it was Mrs. Gilbert, and now it's this Randolph woman.
Stacy, come on, wait a minute. No, we need to talk here.
Stacy.
You might as well leave. I have nothing to say to either one of you.
Stacy, I know exactly how you feel, and I don't blame you for a minute. I really don't.
What?
Look, I owe you an apology, and how do you want it? On my knees?
What is this all about? What are you doing here?
Stacy, I am sorry for what happened this morning. I'm sorry for all the things I had to say. I really am.
Gene.
Look, this is all in the past now. It really is. Let's get down to business, shall we? I want to talk to you about your next assignment.